feeling drained by your business? Is it overgiving? Is it burnout? Is it exhaustion? Today, we are going to explore why you're feeling drained and what you can do about it without having to give more. Hey everyone, this is Acacia Thornton, the CEO, legal coach, longtime business advisor, and attorney, here to answer your questions live while also telling you real client stories. Like, what is everyone dealing with out there and what we're doing to solve it? And this is the Aligned Business Series, where we go live 3 times a week answering your questions. So find your chat button. If you haven't found it yet, I will definitely get to all the questions in there a little bit later in today's call, because I first want to go over some things that are really happening out there. Like, let's get real for a second, because overgiving and generosity aren't the same thing. Good customer service is not overgiving, and overgiving doesn't mean that it's about customer service. And something that I see a lot with my clients is the idea of capacity does not mean obligation. Just because you can give your time, just because you can give more of your heart, more of your mental being and space. And what about your resources? Oh, I can give you one more sample, or I can give you one more revision. It all adds up eventually. Because what ends up happening is anytime anything that is something you give to your business, something that makes you money, what makes you money? You make your business money. Here's what is unique about your business. You're what's special about your business. So your head space, your heart space, your energy. And it's not just what you give to the business, right? You ever think about that client in the shower or that project? You're like, oh my gosh, brilliant idea. Or what do I say during this meeting later today? All of that adds up. It's not just what's on the calendar, what's in the schedule, or hey, the billable hours type of a thing. There's more going on when you're running a business and giving it to your clients. And anything that has value in that, your time, your experience, your heart space, your head space, but also your resources, your team, your G drive, your cloud space, right? Every little thing starts to add up. And in business, the reason you chose to create a business is you wanted to bring your love, your light, and your expertise and your passions to the world for an exchange, for a value exchange. And this is where things start to feel like overgiving, is when that seesaw of giving and taking isn't equal. It isn't balanced. You're overgiving without getting in response. So I'm going to show you in a little bit later today, while we're doing that live Q&A, to also, and today hey, April, how are you? It's good to see you. You too, Emily. Hi. See you all in there. Yes. Welcome. Yeah, we're talking about feeling drained in your business, because it's something that happens with everybody, right? No matter how expertise you are. Some of the world's biggest CEOs end up feeling exhausted and drained because. And so what can you do when you're a small business owner, new business owner, solopreneur? You carry so many different hats and you're doing so many different things. You're also trying to build them. So what can you do? We do with so many of our other systems and processes that when we're, okay, here's the process that's the most efficient and most effective. But what about your efficiency, your effectiveness, what you can give? Setting up a system that is operational for boundaries and where the give and take is. And part of that is not just identifying you, which we'll get into it here in a second, but also identifying the client's asks. What things are those clients always asking for? What things could they ask for? Where could miscommunication happen? So I'll tell you a client story right here, right now, a consulting client, long-time consultants. Gosh, their company had actually been in business for over 100 years. That is how long they had been in business. And their new client came to them, they loved our expertise. We're doing this for the first time. We want you, consulting company, your expertise, your insight, come help us build this, do this the right way. And so my client was like, yep, here's the contract, here's the milestones, here's everything we're going to deliver along that. But then the client would come back after every deliverable. So let's say like milestone 1 gets delivered. The client is like, yeah, this is great. Love it. We're going to start implementing it. You go ahead and work on milestone 2. So while my client is working on milestone 2, their client is implementing milestone 1. And what would end up happening is right around the time they were going to deliver milestone 2 to their client, the client would come back with a, hey, now that we're implementing milestone 1, can you reformat it for us? Can you do this to it? Oh, thank you. Awesome. Okay. Then now that they're doing that, then milestone 2 would be delivered. Everyone's good. Everyone's moving forward. But then the client would now be, oh, now the other team needs to fix milestone 1 to be this way. I know you're on milestone 3, but we also need milestone 2 to look like, right? Do you see how this is like, where's the target? Where's done at? And what ended up happening is this whole situation kept going on like this. It's supposed to be about a 2 to 3 month project. That's what my client had billed it at, priced it at, and planned their business planning and other client projects around, only for this to end up going closer to 6 months. And this is when they came to me. They're like, Acacia, we can't get this thing done. We've literally had to say no to other clients because we have to keep giving to this client. And what was wrong from the beginning, right? What went wrong here is everyone thought they had communicated. That's the thing about so many times we feel we have said, here's the milestones, here's the deadlines, here's the deliverables, here's the pricing, the value exchange for this. But then the client also feels they've communicated. We want handholding. We want your expertise. We want these customized as we implement them for the first time. Both sides thought they had said everything that needed to be said. Both sides thought they put everything into the contract that needed to be there. Yet this was happening. Time was dragging on. More asks, more confusion. Nobody got to done. And my client needed to get to done because they were saying no to other business. They were not prepared for this. They were expending time, resources, headspace, heart space, and more. So this is an example where they felt drained and had to overgive, trying to get their client to understand what done looked like. But the client had a different definition of done. So, and I've had other like design clients that do this when if you're a business coach and you're helping somebody build a business, at what point are you done? Is it when you've given the 12 calls, 12 weeks of calls? Is that done? Or is it when you get them to a certain point? You and your client could have different ideas of what is done. So that's one area where we start to feel drained by the business. And what ends up happening here, once you find yourself in these types of scenarios, while you're drained, while you're exhausted, while you're stressed and overworked, while you're trying to figure it out, now you've got to come up with the words, the communication, the inner strength to set the boundary, to hold the boundary. It's not the best time for you to be doing those things. The best time to be doing that was back when you felt 100% you, 100% everything you have to bring. But also when your client is open to saying yes. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of business owners misunderstand about the idea of setting boundaries. Your decision as your job as a business owner is only to decide what boundaries you want and where you want them. It is not your job to communicate them. It is not your job to hold them. It is not your job to decide mid-project. This is your business. You set those boundaries early. So what I started to do with that consulting client to get them to this place is we did 2 things. 1, to get them through what they were going through right now. And then 2, to make sure it never happened to them again, right? They had lawyers on their team. They have expert contracts, and yet this basic thing was missing because they never had been told it could be this easy. So the first thing we looked at is, what can we do to say done is done, right? We look to that. That's called an acceptance clause. An acceptance clause communicates in your agreements, done is done when this happens, not delivery. So many people are like, well, I delivered it. Well, if your client can come back and ask for a revision, even if 2 revisions are included, done is not done yet, right? We need to say exactly when done is done every single step of the way and at the end of the project. Then we also need to outline what happens anytime there is what's called scope creep. When the scope of services slowly creeps right? It's not unreasonable for a client to come back and be like, hey, we loved it in this format. Can we just get it a little bit adjusted? Right? Is that a whole new project? Maybe, maybe not. So understanding what it takes for you to do whatever your clients might ask. And this is one of the reasons why you're not going to find these in an AI generated or a template you got online or even a law firm sourced template, is because they have to be customized by you. And this is why you put them. You can have as many of these as you want. When I work with my clients, sometimes we do as many as 7 scope creep clauses, because that's what the clients might ask for. And what clients love is it's right there in writing. They know that they have to finish it within this many revisions, this many asks, this many samples, this many hours, this much timeline, or there's that value exchange. Back to what we were talking about earlier. Giving is what you set up your business for, but you set your business up to get a value back for what you give. And this is where you start to feel drained, when it becomes uneven. And this is what a scope creep clause does for you, is it says, this is what happens on the other side of that client. It's not a punishment. It is a decision. It's a decision. You need more revisions. This is what happens. And that's what could have happened, right? Those 2 clauses right there would have solved the overgiving situation. It would have resolved done for that consulting client right then and there. If you're a business coach, right? Same thing. When is done done? Is it when your client thinks it's done? Oh, I have a business that's up and running, making 6 figures. Or is it when you've checked your boxes of what is done? We want these things to be very, very clear. So many times business contracts, they set what is affirmatively given in the value exchange, not where the boundary is, what happens when you cross the boundary, but also what about ghosting and silence? Anytime you have to chase a client, you are overgiving. You did not budget for that time in the pricing. So all of that is extra. Those are all areas we give. And you also want to, like I said, the thinking in the shower, the brainstorming, whatever that is for you, all of that counts. All of it counts in the pricing structure and what's in those agreements. And going back to what I talked about earlier, it's not your responsibility as the business owner to decide mid-stressor while you're exhausted and feeling drained, balancing everything you balance, to now come up with, okay, this is where I think I'm going to draw the line. This is how I'm going to communicate it. I'm going to be like this. I hope I don't piss them off. When you have a system in place that supports you, and this is one of the things that the guide is going to help you with, that free guide, I'll give you the link to that in a second, is that you're going to see how the process, the system does the work for you. Imagine your contract already has the exact language to communicate to your client. Your client has said, yes, I agree. This is how I want to operate. This is how you get aligned clients, because they're going to say yes to how you want to work. You don't want the clients that are going to drain you. You want the clients that are going to respect your time, respect your expertise, and respect the value exchange. That's who you want as your client. And so when they say yes and they sign off, they've said yes to that. And now if they start to ask more, you get 2 amazing things. 1, you only have to remind them they've already agreed to this. It's the only thing you have to do now. You don't have to come up with the words. You don't have to go back and figure out where is the line. The line's already been agreed to. And if they decide to cross it, you know you're getting paid for it. You know you're getting paid for it because they have already agreed to pay you for it. They've agreed how they're going to pay you for it. It's all in that agreement. It's not on your weight, your shoulders anymore. So let me put that guide up. And then like I said, I already see some of your questions coming in, and let me get to that. So the 7 signs you're overgiving free guide right here. It goes through 7 different areas where I see a lot of clients overgiving. It talks about how it's impacting your revenue, where it's happening in your business, more some of the root causes and mindset that we're at, and then it debunks those myths for you and starts to show you options and ways that you can resolve these without having to, be in the moment, be stressed out, because the goal is to never be stressed out in the first place. Don't wait until you are stressed out to figure out how to stop being stressed. No, you're not going to be stressed at all to begin with. All right, let's get to these questions. What do we have? How do I stop overgiving without feeling like I'm being selfish? Okay. So in the beginning of your business, you have decided what people are willing to pay for, right? They're willing to pay for your time, your expertise, your products, so whatever it is that you deliver and give. So maybe it's your creativity, your experience, something you've made. So you've already decided that it's worth something. And that is not selfish. Whenever we give something in the world, we have the right to have value exchanged back for that. Otherwise, you don't have to give it. It's always a choice when we give. So first off, looking at that's why you set your business up. And what I sometimes like to remind my clients is, okay, so why is it that if your client wanted 15 calls instead of 13, in the beginning, you probably would have charged more. Let's say you charge $100 per call. Instead of $1,300, you would have charged $1,500 for the package, right? Cool. So how is it that at the beginning, your time is worth $100 per call, but after the 13 calls, if they want a 14th and a 15th, you're like, I'm just going to give it to them. How did the value of your time and your expertise depreciate? It didn't. It didn't. What's that showing is that your client trusts you. Your client's coming to you, and we love that as business owners. We want them to trust us and come to us and ask us. But we don't want to just give because we have already given to them. It's not an open-ended thing. Same with service at the end of a contract. We don't want to overgive just because it happens on the back end. There's still value. So feeling selfish is more of how your mindset is maybe shifting through that process, or once you have a different type of relationship with your client or something, maybe kind of examine where on the inside it's feeling selfish. Because it's not selfish to ever ask for a value exchange when you give something. When you go to the store, if you want the food off the shelves or that outfit off that hanger, there's a value exchange. If you go to spa services, if you order something online, there's a value exchange. There's nothing selfish about asking for the value of your expertise and your uniqueness. So I would maybe kind of explore that and see what's going on there. Yeah, it's a good question because it's an internal thing. It's not your client. Your client isn't being like, well, I hope they're feeling selfish now, or I want them to feel this way. They keep asking because they like working with you. Yep. How do I tell a client we're done when they haven't sent feedback? Okay, so telling a client you're done, this is another way, an acceptance clause in your agreement. Acceptance clauses, when they're written correctly, will account for a ghosting. You need to know when your projects are done. You can't plan a budget. You can't plan your calendar. You can't bring on new clients. If every project can bleed into Q4, even though you sign them up in Q1, that's not manageable. That's a stressor. That's definitely feeling drained by your business, all right? So an acceptance clause accounts for everything. When they contact you, when they ask for more, when they don't ask for more, if they approve it, and when they ghost you. They don't get to do that, forever. You have a business to run, and we let them know, hey, client, you must respond this way or act this way. I must have this on this timeline. Otherwise, here's the outcome. Here's the consequence, right? And I don't mean consequence as a punishment. If they don't ask for those revisions within 30 days, you're not going to give them to them, next year. I had a client that happened to. She was doing design work, delivered it. Client was like, all good. And she's like, okay, cool. She heard back from them like 6 months later or something later in the year. And they're like, okay, we're ready for our revisions now. And she's like, you had approved it back when I delivered to you earlier this year. And they're like, yeah, but our contract says we get 2 revisions. So the client's under the impression that they've paid for 2 revisions. There was no timeline on that. There was no any of that. So telling your client you're done, the best way to do that is upfront in the contract because then they have agreed to it. Once you have that, though, you can fill the gap. I have a few videos as well as an acceptance clause handbook, a playbook that has exact scripts you can use like in your emails and stuff to kind of build. When you don't have it up front in your contract, you almost have to build it along the way. An email, say, usually when you send the deliverable, hey, I need to hear back by this day, or this is the outcome, and then follow-ups to that. The challenge when it's not in your agreement is that it's not legally enforceable. So you get to use it as guideposts to your client, but it's not legally enforceable. But again, if it's in the contract, it's enforceable and guideposts, and everybody's agreed to it. So everyone's on board. Yay. What if the client pushes back? Okay, so let's look at this in 2 different time points, right? Again, up front, if it's in your contract and they've signed it, they've agreed. The client has said yes. And what's really important about agreements is that everyone honor what they've agreed to. You too. If you've said you're going to deliver things on a certain deadline or a certain way and a certain quality with certain features or functions, that's important that you follow your half of the agreement. And it's important that they follow their half of the agreement. That's the point of an agreement. We agree that we're going to proceed this way. It's appropriate for everyone to proceed this way. So they don't really get to push back because they've signed it. They've said yes to it. You can also add it to your onboarding. If there's any certain ones, like you don't want to go through every single clause of your contract, although I do know some clients that do that. You want to go through the key ones, and that also helps. So that way, if they have any objections or uncertainties, they can ask up front. But then when it happens later, it comes back to that communication. It comes back to those earlier pieces of communication. It's how it feels when we communicate it, not what we're communicating. If you knew there was a wall or a boundary or, you go beyond this, you have to pay the whole time, you can't suddenly be like, oh, I didn't know that. You've been informed the whole time. But if they hadn't been informed the whole time, if it wasn't in the agreement, you've never said anything, and now you're like, oh, that costs more. Well, that feels different. Even though it's the same outcome, it feels different to the client. There's a whole class or course I took on negotiating tactics, even just negotiating price. How you negotiate has an emotional impact, a subconscious impact on the other side. It's never what you're doing or what that final price is. It's how you went about negotiating it. And it's the same with your clients. If they're pushing back, there was probably something along the way that could have been better communicated, could have been better outlined. And I would start to look at that and look to alleviate that so it doesn't happen in the future. Let's see. I think I saw 2 more, right? Do I need to rewrite my whole contract? Oh, no. No. This is one of the areas. So I'm a big believer in customized contracts as a whole. Your whole contract should eventually be customized, but we don't all have the resources to do that right up front. Okay. So do realize there is an ROI. There is a reason every medium and large and big company out there has a custom contract, not something they got off of AI, not the random template from a law firm. They have a customized contract because they get more money. There is an ROI to your revenue for having a customized contract. But not everybody starts their business or in their first few years. You're not always ready for that ROI, right? There is that upfront investment. So what you can do is update the parts about the boundaries. When it comes, and so the guide will walk you through this as well. It'll give you the 3 key areas. But when it comes to boundaries, it's usually your acceptance clause, scope creep clause. I also call one the anti-ghosting clause. And then just sort of the client give and take. What do you need from them when? These are things that you probably don't have in your templates because they do require customization. But you don't have to re-customize the whole contract. You can just put these in. And you don't need a lawyer for these. These are actually part of the value exchange. So just like you don't need a lawyer when you're setting your price or your product exchange and so on, these are part of the value exchange. So you as a business owner and leader can do this. You don't need a lawyer. So no, you don't need to redo the whole contract. I do recommend that as you grow your business, you start to customize those other areas, looking at your verticals, looking at your indemnification, your insurance, and all those things. But for now, let's just work on the areas that focus on your boundaries, because your sanity and your energy are needed for you to ever scale and grow your business and be successful. Yeah. So the guide will definitely have a great structure and outline for you on that. Yeah. All right. One more question, right? Is that what I saw? One more question. Can I charge extra for revisions if I didn't put it in writing? Ooh, okay. First off, go look at what is in writing. Is there some level of heads up that if they need more, there is a charge? Or, hey, this is only what's included. You want to see if there was ever a boundary in there and kind of work your communication from that foundation. Because nobody wants to be charged for something that they don't see coming. If they think it's like the consulting story I told you earlier, right? That client, that customer thought all these little customizations as they implemented it were included. And they weren't wrong for thinking that. They told the consulting company they expected handholding because this was their first time. The consulting company didn't realize that handholding meant all these little baby things. So to charge for all of those extras, they first needed to finish what they had promised in the agreement they would finish. And that was one of the things we had a challenge with them is they had a very, very bad acceptance clause, but it was there. They had no scope creep clauses whatsoever. And so I was like, hey, your acceptance clause says you got to get all the way to this point before we can even communicate to the client that this is done. So we have to honor what has been agreed to. We have to honor that. So all these things along the way, you got to either figure them out or hurry up and get to the finish line as outlined in the contract so you can say we're done. So always start with what is in writing, what has been agreed to, and work your communication from there. Like I said earlier, how we communicate it and the timelines we do it to the client impact how they feel about the communication. So I think you asked about revisions, right? Yeah, you asked about revisions. Okay, so let's say you expected 2 revisions. Maybe when you deliver it at first, be like, okay, we're here at this phase, we usually only do 2 revisions. Now the client knows that it's normal to have 2. You're not saying I'm going to charge you, and they're not expecting to be charged, but they at least know anything beyond that is beyond normal. And then when they get to that second one, you can say, hey, we're at that second revision now. Usually at this point, it's either going to start delaying things. We might have to charge more. Let me know how we can maximize where we are to keep things on track for you. Right. So do you see how we're kind of laying those pieces, the foundations to move you forward? But if the contractor says you get revisions and you're just like, hey, I'm going to charge you now, your client will likely come back with wait a minute, where'd that come from? So yeah, breadcrumbs to get there for sure. All right. Also, don't forget to grab that guide, 7 guides, you're overgiving in your business. It will help you do like an internal audit, find those things that are happening to you, how they're impacting your revenue, and then what you can do to communicate, to stop, to get these boundaries set up as part of your systematic processes, not something you have to come up with while you're stressed and overworked. And now I got to come up with the words and I got to set the. Don't be chasing your tail when you're already stressed out. Find a way to make this easier on you. You deserve it. You work hard. You bring great things to your clients. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow as we continue to build on this. Boundaries, but this time, how they're going to make you more revenue. This has been the CEO Legal Coach. I'll see you all soon. If you're an entrepreneur looking to get those boundaries set with your clients and in your agreements, you are in the right place. Hello, everyone. Today, we are breaking down what real boundaries look like in our businesses and why being flexible or relying on your internal mood and ideas in the moment aren't really the best successful way to maximize your revenue and, of course, prevent burnout.
Hey everyone, this is Acacia, the CEO legal coach, and I am here live with all of you today. And I do have to say, do you like my Princess Leia look? I had fire alarm testing in my home today, and I'm just fresh back from Europe, which meant I had to find and scatter to get everything ready for this. And so we have my headphones as our microphone in an undisclosed location. But have no fear. As always, this is the Aligned Business Series. The Aligned Business Series, where we go live 3 times a week to answer your real life business questions and tell you real client stories. Like, what are other business owners going through out there? What are they facing? And most importantly, what are they doing to solve it? And this idea of boundaries is a really, really big one. I get this one a lot. I see it searched online a lot. And it's about time we had some answers. So that's what you're going to hear today. You're going to hear some real live client stories, what's been going on with other business owners, what we did to solve it. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a free guide, 100% free guide to download so you can do your own analysis for yourself and your business and decide what's the best way you want to proceed forward. But don't forget to find the chat button in your hey Mark the in your online program because I will be answering your questions live. So let's get dive in here for a second because I'm going to just start off with a truth bomb. All right, this is a big myth that I really am surprised that this is a big mindset shift between small and new entrepreneurs versus those who are established and successful. I promise you, those companies that are making 7 figures or more a year, their boundaries are not being set internally. It's not something that they're like, hey, this is what I want to say today. This is how I feel. That is not happening. Boundaries aren't just an internal thing, they are built into the business. They are not a mindset issue. They are a process and systematic, operational element to those bigger and better successful businesses, right? And I don't mean better as in better at, the ideas and the brilliance or passion. You're clearly set for success in what you're doing if you're asking these questions because it's time to let the system do the boundary work for you. And what does that look like? That's going to look like your contracts, as you'll see here in a second, your timelines, your deliverables, your pricings. They don't just enforce the boundaries for you because it if you have something else that can communicate when you're not there, if you have something else that can remind your clients what's going on, if you have something that your client has agreed to, you now don't have to worry about hitting your tipping points before you step up and say something. You now don't have to worry, or am I cutting it off too early? Am I giving everything that was promised? Because absolutely everything was agreed to. And as you'll see here in a second, a lot of times small business owners, when they have a contract, they think they have set these boundaries. Oh, I set the milestones, I set the deliverables, I set the deadlines. If you have ever worried about stretching a timeline, a late payment, you're being nice, you overgive, you give something that wasn't necessarily agreed to, but it's a small ask. If your client can ask for anything, if your client can ghost you, if your client can come along and shift what's going on, if your client can ask for something you think is already done and they can reopen it, these are all examples of areas where boundaries are not systematically set. And so what ends up happening? Revenue loss, time loss, resentment, exhaustion, and burnout. These boundaries are what prevent burnout for you personally, but they are also what increase your revenue. So let me tell you a story about one of my clients. She was a solopreneur. She'd been in business for a number of years, I think about 10 years at that point. And she offered both coaching and design services. So she'd help people start their business and then she'd help you design your website or create your logos and your marketing. And she had contracts for both of these. And she had sold to one of her clients, as she did many of them, a 3 month coaching uh, package, and then the website, the design, the other elements in there. And so she did everything right on paper. She had the milestones, she had the deadlines. There were terms for all of these things on in the paper. But what ended up happening? A few things started to go off track. The client would show up to all of those coaching calls, but she didn't always come prepared. She always had an excuse. Oh, I couldn't decide. It was a crazy week. Oh, my boyfriend broke up with me. Or I can't decide. Can I get a few more mock-ups? I don't know which color I want. So coaching became a little blended with overgiving in the design area. And then when the design parts weren't able to hit their milestones on time, well, she would end up giving more coaching calls to help make that happen. And so these little things throughout their time together ended up spending more time in calls, more time in prep, more time in deliverables, more time. And then she felt she had promised her client, well, a business that had a website and a logo and all these things, and her client was nowhere near done, was nowhere near deciding to be done when all of this 3 month package was up. And so she kept giving and giving and giving, trying to get her client over that finish line. It took another 9 months, 3 months plus 9 months. A year later, my client said, "That's it. I've hit my limit. I can't keep giving to you, client. I can't keep doing these things. You are exhausting me. I can't get to my other clients. I can't get to my other projects. I can't even get another client through the door because I'm so focused on trying to get you where I said I would take you." Right. And so what this ended up costing her was all this extra time lost, unpaid, right? All that was unpaid that she gave. And she actually ended up having to refund 80% because these boundaries weren't in the contract. What was in the contract? What she would deliver. That website never got done. So guess what? She had to give back the money for the website. The logo never got done. So guess what? She had to give all that money back, even though she was showing up. She was supporting. She was creating assets. She was coaching for almost a year. And she had walked away feeling exhausted, but also like she had failed her client, even though she had done everything right from her deliverables standpoint. And so this was an area that you could see that it wasn't a lack of professionalism. It wasn't a lack of care. It was not a lack of expertise or preparation. It's that she lacked boundaries that she could lean on when the project started to unravel. She expected herself to know where the boundary was. She expected herself to be able to communicate it and to be enforce it. And all of these things when she's already hit exhausted. So what this starts to tell us is that boundaries aren't about being too nice or unprofessional. And it's not about just having a contract that says what's included and here's the price and here's the deadlines. Because if you've ever heard me talk about my consulting clients, how many times does that scope just slowly creep? Or you deliver something and then the client comes back and wants it reopened, even though you're 4 steps down in the project. So they want to go back to step one, but you're on step four. So here's some signs that you're overgoing, right? So you keep hearing, hey, can I just ask for one more thing? One more email, one more call, one more sample, one more. And by the way, all of these that I'm going to go through right now, they are in the free guide. The free guide, I think the website's on the page, but I'm also going to give you the QR code here in a second. If you're the only one showing up on time or the only one showing up ready for your clients' calls, it's their business they're trying to start. It's their project. They came to you to get your expertise for, yet somehow they're not ready to be done, even though you are. If you've ever delayed or avoided sending an invoice or follow up information, if you have ever had to follow up more than twice, these are all signs of areas where we can get your contracts and your systems to set you up for success. This also happens whenever you're rescheduling or moving your calendar around. If you don't feel in charge of your calendar, this is a great area where you might need a boundary. If you feel responsible for the results, even though the client is responsible for the results. That's another area. Uh, and also, if you ever downplay how much time and resources things take. Oh, it's just one more sample. Just it only cost me like $5. No, that costs you the time. Costs you the materials. It costs you the resources. All of that adds up. And every time we give and give and give without something of value in reciprocation, we are overgiving. That's a loss of time, loss of energy, loss of your growth as a business. You can't get another client through the door if you're still on the client you had yesterday. You risk your reputation. You really, really do, because you risk not bringing your best, but you also risk your clients not feeling that they have all the boundaries they need to know how do they proceed. The biggest things that go wrong in businesses and reviews is when you think one thing and your client thinks another. The lack of boundary, because if there's clarity in communication, aka the boundary is set and agreed to in your contract, there isn't uncertainty. There isn't doubt. There is a set and agreed to expectation for everything, for both parties along the way. But also, like we talked about, you start to doubt yourself as an entrepreneur, you start to doubt yourself as a leader, and your revenue, your passion. It all slowly drains simply because the boundaries weren't set. So, okay, we're talking about the boundaries. What do you do? How do you do it? When you do it, here it is. Okay, I'm gonna go through 6 things right now. Oh, let me get that guide up and start getting your questions. And I have seen a few come in. I have them. I see them there. So here it is. If you want to get that guide, the 7 signs you're overgiving free guide, it's right here. That guide is going to walk you through 7 signs, how they're affecting your revenue, ways to kind of like audit your own business, see if it's something that's impacting you, and then give you additional resources like additional videos, the exact sentences you can use, all the type of stuff is in that guide. So, how to set boundaries? First, decide what's included and what's not before you start the work. So many times, again, it's like the coaching and the consulting clients, like, oh, this is what's included. These are the milestones. Okay, where's the boundary? When are we too far? We need to set those clearly. They're usually done with what is called a scope creep clause. Okay. So you need to know what you're delivering, what your time is worth, and what that client is responsible for. You are not the only, just because they're paying you does not mean you're the only one with obligations here. Your client needs to show up too. Let's keep them in line and tell them what you need from them to be successful for them. Help them help you be successful so the whole project gets finished on time the way you want. Which brings me to number 2. Put time limits and checkpoints into every single project, even when you onboard them. And timelines aren't just about when you deliver things, it's when you need feedback back. It's when you need the samples back or their files, whatever you need from them, make it very clear every single step of the way how much time they have to get that back to you and what happens. What happens if they don't? Because, oh, it took them, I call it the hurry up and wait. They demand things from you right here, right now. You send it to them, and then you sit there and wait to get feedback from them. You're working on their timeline, not on a shared timeline. We want a shared timeline. So it's very, very important. Timelines and checkpoints usually done with an acceptance clause. Okay. Third, if you treat just one more thing, one more request, hey, one more of this, like a new request. Okay. If it was not included, it's a new request. If they would have asked you for 4 samples at the start and that would have cost an extra $100, they don't suddenly get $100 off because they're asking for it mid project. One more thing is exactly that. It's one more thing. It is a new request, not a favor. Okay, so this is usually done with a scope creep clause. So if something was not part of that original scope, it deserves a decision of value exchange. Not a problem. Happy to go above and beyond for you, client, but here's how I'm going to need you to go above and beyond for me, above and beyond the price point, above and beyond the timeline, whatever it was. Okay, so we want to have these things ahead of time. Number 4, don't wait until you're exhausted or frustrated or angry to enforce a boundary. Don't wait till you're exhausted and frustrated to communicate a boundary. If you have properly put the boundaries up front with the acceptance clauses, with the scope creep clauses, with the anti-ghosting clauses, all of those things, the client already knows where the boundary is and what happens when they cross it or when they fail to meet it. And now your only job when you are frustrated, exhausted, and tired is to remind them, client, this is what we agreed to. Per the agreement, this is what happens next. Per the agreement, if I don't hear back from you by Friday, this is what happens, right? So don't wait until you're frustrated. Know that it's already been communicated and set and agreed to by the client and yourself right up front when everything was going great. So know the only thing on your list to do is to remind them kindly and professionally. You don't need to do all the work now. Number 5. 5 is right here with that. Let the contracts do that work. Let the contracts carry your boundaries. Decide what you want to communicate in your onboarding, maybe the most common things, but you don't need to sit there and say every single thing up front. You also, because nobody wants to listen to it, in the event that, the air temperature is 78 degrees instead of 79 degrees, you don't have time for that with every client. But your contract can be set once and used over and over and over again. That's one of the powerful things about the boundaries is that the contract can do all of this heavy lifting for you. It's done up front. You only have to set it once because now you're not the one holding the line. Your systems, your agreements, your onboarding do all of that heavy lifting for you. So you get to say doing the fun part, the parts you love, the creativity, the expertise, and the delivery of your deliverables, the way you love to do that. So don't rely on you internally. Let your systems, your contracts particularly do the work for you. And last step here before we get into your Q&A is if you've already overgiven in your business, that's okay. Congratulate yourself for finding your boundary, for observing your boundary, and now honoring your boundary, right? Reset, put the boundaries in place in your agreement. Get the guide on the screen right now, the 7 signs you're overgiving, so you can put the boundary in place so it doesn't happen again. Don't wait until the next client. You don't have to throw away your relationship with yourself, with your business, or any of your clients, or worry. No, because that's what those 7 and 8 figure businesses and bigger have out there. They are not relying on their mood and their situations day to day to decide what is a boundary and where the boundaries are for their internal sanity, for their revenue growth, and for the success of the business. All right, I see the questions coming in, so let's get to these. Yes, the guide does have it's a pretty big guide actually. Because there's some myth busters, 7 signs for every single one of the signs. It's also going to show you the root causes of those things, how it might be impacting your revenue, so you can decide if it's something that applies to the way you're doing business or not. It's also going to have links to videos with solutions. It's going to give you some links to statements, lines, quotes you can use, all that type of stuff. So it's a pretty thorough guide in there. Yep. Okay, so questions. What if I already said yes to something outside the scope with one of my clients? Can I walk it back? One of the big things about boundaries is honoring what we've promised to do and holding our clients to honoring what they've promised to do. If you have promised to do something, it's best in your business, your reputation, your energetic self to honor that. Now, if there's a boundary that can be put on that, hey, yes, I said I would support you with extra, customer service. Just want to clarify that usually means about 30 days extra service, right? Not unlimited, not in perpetuity, that type of thing. So you can put a boundary on it, but it's always just good business and good for the soul to honor our promises, but to do our best to do them in ways that are soul filling, right? To do that. Um, but if you're mid-project and you're starting to see, hey, they keep asking for more, go ahead and put that boundary. Hey, we've only agreed to two. We've only agreed to 50 days of software updates or something. You can now start to communicate the boundaries along the way. But if you've already agreed to something, it's just good business to honor what we've promised, whether that's written or verbal. What if the client keeps missing deadlines? Do I just wait? Okay. So this is one that we get a lot in service-based businesses, whether it's coaching, design work, consulting, so on. What if the client keeps missing their deadlines? What do? Your contract should have a consequence. Client, if I don't hear back from you within 7 days, I get to assume it's approved. I get to have an extra 2 weeks to complete the next phase. There's a consequence. Actions and inactions, right? Because what if they ghost you? Have outcomes that impact the project. And so when we communicate those, that's usually done by an acceptance clause. An acceptance clause is and you'll have those are in the guide, by the way. The That communicates that. So you shouldn't, if your client keeps missing deadlines, well, then they're the ones who are suffering their consequences. Sometimes I have ones with my clients that, like, if I don't get payment by this date, this contract is terminated. Right. So then I'm like, I now don't have to worry about chasing my clients down. Hey, if you wanted to work with me, now is your window. Because I usually set up clients on a quarterly basis. Most of my projects are either 30-day or 3 month with my clients. And so I don't want to keep chasing you down, chasing you down, chasing you down. And then suddenly I've got 24 clients in Q4. I I need to keep those boundaries. That spot, I'll hold it for you. It's yours. You signed up, but that does mean payment needs to be within these timelines. So that's usually what I would say is if they keep missing deadlines, try to communicate the impact of that. Because 9 out of 10 times they're not missing deadlines to be malicious. Something just got deprioritized, right? Especially if they've paid you. They just got deprioritized somehow, or they don't realize they're holding up something that you need from them. So that's what I would do is just tell them, hey, this is what happens. Let's see. Next question. Isn't it better to be flexible with clients, especially when you're growing? Okay. There's flexibility and then there's overgiving. Flexibility is saying, hey, our appointments are scheduled every Friday at 10 a.m. If you need a different time, please let me know at least 24 hours in advance. Otherwise, there will be a no show fee. Okay, that's giving them flexibility. You have 24 hours to tell me, but I'm not going to just let you no show on me, cancel on me last minute, and so on. So there's this idea of flexibility versus sustainability. When does your energy start to be depleted? When does your revenue become depleted? A business is a value exchange. Value exchange, my time, my expertise, my deliverables, my resources in exchange for usually payment from the client. And so, anytime any of those things that are important to the lifeline of my business get overstretched, I am overstretching myself as well as my business's lifeline. It's really important that when we want to grow our businesses to have those solid foundations. Like the example I gave, if all of my clients, uh, great, I can set up, 10 clients a quarter. I don't hold that many clients. I only hold like 4 to 6, but then they all delay and suddenly I've got 24 clients in Q4. Well, that wasn't right for me. That's not being flexible. That's breaking my sustainability. I can't sustain that. I also don't have revenue the other 3 quarters. So the idea of flexibility versus sustainability. Ask yourself internally, like, when do I start to feel depleted? When does this start to feel exhausting to you? When does it start to misrepresent your timeline? The story we gave today, a 3 month coaching package suddenly became 9 extra months. Okay, well, that's 9 extra months of not paid work that she could have had 3 other sets of clients come through the door. So, flexibility versus sustainability. When does it start to break your business model, your business resources, your bottom line, but most importantly, you? We need you at your best for success. Do I need to update my whole contract to start setting better boundaries? No, 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 no. I will say bigger companies have custom contracts. They have custom contracts because it makes them more money. There is an ROI. There is an ROI the more you can customize your contracts. But when you're going from that, startup into building that sustainability in your business, you may not be ready to make that full investment yet, or there's still some growing phases. So what I would do is I would just do the pieces along the way. This is what I do with clients a lot is right now, just we're talking boundaries, right? So anti-ghosting clauses, acceptance clauses, some scope creep clauses, those right there are already going to empower you. That's not redoing the whole contract. That's just getting some things in there that are going to build a better foundation from you and make sure you get that value exchange. When you start to get overgive, you get something back for it that helps your business. So you don't need to do the whole contract at once. You also can, once you learn what a scope creep clause is, you can just make more of your own. Make more and more of your own. Like I have a playbook that's what it's designed to do. It gives you much to just copy paste, or you can write your own. So then as you find a new boundary, you're like, oh, it's probably time I best did something. You can just throw that in there yourself. You don't need a lawyer for these. These are part of your business. You do not need a lawyer for these. Yeah, of course, always welcome to get a lawyer. Enforcing them is always good to have that legal input, but you don't need that. It's just like you can set your own project dates, milestones, pricing. Boundaries are part of that. You can do this. What is the difference between a policy and a boundary? Aha. Okay. Policies are how you go about things. This is our boundaries in communication versus what has been agreed to. So there's a difference between saying, I give you 30 days extra customer support versus how I'm going to give you those 30 days of extra support. Policy is the how you go about it. It's kind of like your checklist or your playbook as you're doing something. But the boundary is agreed to and enforceable. When it's in your contract, particularly, it's enforceable. Your client has agreed to it. Everyone said yes, but you can now enforce it if you want to. Where policies are a little bit more give and take, a little bit more flexibility as you're going about something, but the boundaries are clearly set. You can choose to give an exception to them, but it's there as officially set. This is what's agreed to. This is what's been stated. This is enforceable in court if we ever got there. Very rarely to ever get to that point, but it's that level of it's actually a signed contract. So that would be the difference between the two. All right, one more question I thought I saw. Where is it? What if setting firmer boundaries costs me the client? Good. You don't want clients that are going to drain you. You don't want clients. Like, think of some of the biggest brands that you love. They probably have competitors that you don't love. Why do you love the ones you love? You love what they stand for. You love how they do business. You love their deliverable. And you're willing to work within their way of doing things because you love that. The right clients will work the way you want to work. You have the right to set up your business and work the way you want to work. And if the client is not going to fit into that space, they weren't the right clients to begin with. You don't want the clients that get 9 months of extra work from you and still get 80% refund. That's not who you're looking to work with. You want to work with people that want to work with you the way you want to work together. So, a firmer boundary is never going to cost you the right client. And because it gives your clients safety, they know what to expect, they know what's expected of them, in the value exchange, 9 out of 10 times it actually leads to better customer relationships, not losing clients. I've never had somebody lose a client over that. Nope. All right, this has been Acacia, the CEO legal coach. Don't forget to get that free guide that's on the screen there, the Overgiving guide. And I will see you all later this week as we continue to talk about enforcing and setting boundaries and how, what's up next, how they're going to make you more money. I'll see you all then.
And we are live. How to set boundaries that actually increase your revenue. Look, you don't need to be more rigid. You actually just need to be more clear. A lot of business owners think they're being clear when they focus on some things in their client agreements, particularly payment, delivery, and milestone. But today we're going to show you how to take that even further in ways that protect your sanity, but also increase your revenue. My name is Acacia Thornton. I'm the CEO, legal coach, longtime attorney, and business advisor turned coach and energetic superstar. And I'm really here to help my clients elevate their space from within and without when it comes to their client relationships, their revenue, and their business elevation. And this is the Aligned Business series where we go live 3 times a week telling you real client stories. These are real world stories that have happened and what we did to solve them. And today's is about that, setting the boundaries that actually increase your revenue. Because why don't most boundaries work? What is it that's happening when you think you've got that milestone listed, those payment plans listed, and even the deliverables? Why do somehow things tend to go beyond that? Because there's a lot of assumptions is one of them, right? We don't write down, here's the boundary and what happens after it. Or we don't agree to them. You assume your clients understand certain things, that this is how a business like this is run. And one of the stories that we did on Tuesday, we're not doing it today, but we did it on Tuesday, is the client assumed when they said, hey, we need handholding, that really meant every little piece of thing ever, where my client was like, that's just not reasonable to give, especially for extra months of time, right? So we don't always really have the clarity and communication that we think we do up front with our clients. Then there's also the idea of you wait until they're at the line or that you've crossed the line. And then we look to enforce, well, hey, here was the boundary, here was this. And that ad hoc, that post hoc situation, it actually creates an interesting tension. Because while it's not a conflict, it does create this, well, you've hit the wall. And nobody likes, and your client, right? Nobody wants to feel like, well, okay, here's the wall. I hit it. Now what? I didn't realize the wall was coming. So that after the fact also has a big impact. And of course, customer service matters, right? You want to be nice. You want to be accessible. You want to get things over the finish line. If you promise certain deliverables at a certain standard, you want to make sure they get done. Your client's paid for certain things to get done. Let's say it's a website and you've gone through all the work and meetings to get there, but yet there's not enough info back from the client. And that's one story we're going to hear today. What do? Right? You just say, well, that's it. You're out of calls. You don't get anymore, even though your website's not done. Right? So how do you actually deliver what you've promised to deliver within the bounds of what you've promised to deliver it in? So these are all really important. And unlike a lot of you guys are in for a treat today. Unlike a lot of our Aligned Business series calls, I'm going to give you 2 client stories today, right? 2. And the first, she's an interior designer, interior decorator, and she does a lot of stuff on site. So she's constantly driving across town, going to meet those clients in person, seeing the space, checking out what the contractors are doing and making sure everything is done right. Well, one Thursday, she drives across town and she gets ghosted. The client doesn't show. And she was messaging the client, where are you? You come in. And 20 minutes later, they're like, hey, we're not going to make it. Can we push it back a couple hours? This also for her and this particular client, it wasn't the first time they had done this. But even if it was, this no-show and last minute delay, it has a cost to her time. Right? She's not working on other projects. She's not helping other clients. She's not showing up for her other parts of her business. But there's also the idea of the gas and the wear and tear and all of these other things. And now, 2 hours from now, she probably already has something scheduled in her day, and yet she still owes this client a meeting about this situation. So she's got to, in a sense, redo the work while also negatively affecting whatever would be happening in 2 hours. And even if she chose, like, hey, can't do it today, we got to do it tomorrow or 2 days later, it's the same thing. It's time that was designated for now that is not being honored and respected, but also the effort that it took to be prepared and be there for that time she was delivering to this client, right? And the problem here was not just that the client was, a no-show or not great at communication and time management, which happens. A lot of people don't have the same forms of communication and time management expectations that others do. And this is one of those things that's often left unsaid in your client agreements, right? Even a milestone, even a deadline, even a payment wouldn't have addressed this miscommunication or this limbo space. So there was no clause in her client agreements that said her time has a value and that there's no billing for late considerations or last minute calls. It just lets the client continue to do this. So at what point does she step up and say, all right, it's the third time you've done this, I'm not doing this anymore, right? Then how that feels to the client, because there was a give, and now the client just hits a wall. How and when we communicate, and we learn this in negotiations, being a longtime attorney, there's different negotiation styles that have a different emotional impact on the other side. And so if we care about the quality and how our clients feel, we actually want to communicate and clarify things so upfront. And not just in a, hey, I told them, but in the agreement itself. Let the client actually agree to treat the relationship this way. Because now when they overstep it, there can be an outcome. And that's the part we're going to get to, because that outcome can be revenue. And it's not punitive revenue. It's actually revenue that elevates both you and the client at the same time. But before we do that, I want to tell you another client story. This is somebody who's a coach. She's a business coach. She also does logo and website design as an added package or offering for her clients. And so this was what one of her customers had ordered. We're going to do 3 months of coaching and to start her business. And part of that, she was also going to deliver a great logo and a customized website. And so every one of those coaching calls, my client shows up prepared, ready. Here's, the mock-ups. Here's this, here's that. And they kept moving forward, or so she thought. The client would show up to the calls. Wasn't the no-show, was on time, unlike the interior designer. But this client would, I didn't get done with my part. Or, I didn't get the chance to look through that. Or, I need more time. I haven't decided, right? Indecision. Some people are just very indecisive. How do we get them to be on time, to keep their project on track? Well, this kept happening and kept happening. And so eventually the 3 months of coaching calls were up. And yet the delivery of the logo and the website was not done because the customer had not decided all the things that needed to be done. Maybe they didn't decide, well, this is the exact business model or the messaging I want to have, things that matter for a website. So my client added a few more calls. All right, we'll go through a few more calls. Okay, we'll go through a few more calls. And this added 9 months more. 9 months more of calls trying to get her client over the hump, to get them to the finish line of delivering what she had promised, but also what she believed her client paid for. Her client paid for a logo, a website, and coaching. So my client is overgiving 9 months more. It took a year. And guess what? She never got her customer over that finish line. So she eventually had to say, I'm done. I need to terminate this agreement, this relationship. This is not working out. I've given you 9 months of extra calls and you, customer, can't get it together for whatever reason. And she ended up having to refund 80% of the money back. She gave 9 months of extra work and yet still had to refund 80%. Why? Because her contract said what she had to deliver: the website, the logo, the coaching calls. And the pricing was attached to whether or not those got delivered. not everything else. And it also, and here's the important part, it never said what the client has to deliver. When we set up our contracts with our clients, so many times we sit there and are like, well, you owe me payment. They owe you more than that. They owe you showing up on time. They owe you making sure that the deadlines are met, or that if they're not, you're not the one carrying the weight of that, right? If they don't meet the deadline, you now can't meet your deadlines, or you can't get the deliverables done that you promised. And it's not your fault. You've shown up. You've done your part. You've brought your heart, your soul, and your time and energy to this space. The customer didn't. And so why are we on the hook for this? Because we have that vacancy in our contracts. And I'm going to show you here in a second how to actually get the wording. You can just copy paste this wording right into your contracts. But there's two big clauses here that are going to be really helpful. The first is an acceptance clause. An acceptance clause is something that is not going to be in your template. So if you got a generic template online, or you had AI write your template, you're not going to have an acceptance clause in that. And that is because it has to be customized for you and your business. So AI can't truly customize things. It can only see what everybody else already has and regenerate it, or it hallucinates. But an acceptance clause, what it is it's a sentence that says, this is when it's officially done. And not just the end of the project. Every single step. This is when step one is done and payment is due and we move forward. It tells the customer you have to respond. You have to react this way. Even if you ghost me, you can't get away with it. There is still an outcome. So acceptance clauses are really important for that reason, because it's not just deliver and let the client, right? You're going to chase them. What if they don't respond? What if they come back with 55 requests and revisions? You said 2 are included. So the acceptance clause clarifies when delivery is done. It's not when they think it's done, it's when the contract says it is. So the acceptance clause is very, very important, because when it's triggered, right, when delivery is done, payment immediately becomes due, or the next step immediately starts. There is no limbo. There is no waiting. It immediately triggers the next step, which means your payments are going to happen faster and on time. You're not waiting on the client. It also means you're going to get the projects done on time. No more lingering and letting them drag out 9 months, adding things on, clients not showing up for your meetings. No more of that. It says this was done. The acceptance clause elements have been met. We go to the next phase. Plain and simple. You don't get to come back, customer, and now reopen phase one. Phase one is done. And that's really, really powerful, because as business owners, it's not just services we're giving. We have a business to run. That's timelines, that's costs, that's overhead, that's expenses, that's revenue. And every bit of your time, effort, and energy is part of that and needs that value exchange. So that's the first part, is the acceptance clause. The second one is the scope creep clause. This one is really, really, really powerful. I have some clients who put like 7 of them in there. Because what it says is, client, here's the boundary, and here's what happens if you exceed it. That's where a lot of business owners think they have something in the contract. Oh, 2 revisions are included. Okay, well, what happens if the third one is needed? Right? Maybe a third one really is needed, and that's the appropriate thing to do. But then what happens? Because while it's nice to think that everything will be done within 2, the truth is some actually need more than that. So what's the value exchange for that? The customer just keeps getting it until it's done and it's perfect? That's a misalignment of energy. That burden's on you. What about their part in this? It also is great because it tells the client where the boundary is. Hey, client, I need you to communicate everything to me in those 2 rounds of revisions. Not, oh, here's another one. Oh, I came up with this too. Oh, what about this? Right? Slowly moves the line. Hey, saying, hey, this is your last revision that's included. Let's make sure everything you need and you want is met in this, because otherwise, here's what happens. More time is needed. There's an added cost. And it's not just revisions and services. What if they need one more sample? this many samples. Or, hey, you've missed the deadline. I've already started production on your thing. Now, because this deadline is crossed, this is the outcome. We're going to need an extra 40 days to do this, and the price is going to go up 10%. So it's not a punishment. It's saying what the value outcome is. But most importantly, it sets your client up for success, because now your client knows what's expected of them. They also know if they miss these deadlines, well, hey, it's going to cost the project more, but also extend the timeline. It's no longer a 2-month project. Now I have to wait an extra 40 days for my deliverable. Do I want that? It gives them empowerment. These types of communications and clauses give the client empowerment. And because they're there from the beginning, everyone's agreed to it. That's the best part. It's been agreed to, and they empower both sides, because if you have to go do that third revision or you have to go cancel that production element, that you're okay. It's not exhausting. It's not stressful, because the time and costs are going to be accounted for already. Where if you had just said payment for deliverables and milestones and deadlines, none of that would have been communicated. So this is important, because they not only affect your revenue and what you're giving, but they say, client, you cross the line, this boundary gets crossed, whatever it is, there's a cost, which means you get paid more. So, okay, you need to give 2 extra rounds of revisions. Cool, but you're going to get paid for it. That is really important, and why a scope creep and acceptance clause are so, so important to your revenue. But also having beautiful, better client communication and boundaries. That energetic space between you is better communicated. So I want to tell you all how you can I've created a free guide. It's absolutely free guide. And it just kind of walks you through 7 signs that you might be overgiving in your business, right? Are you overgiving? Where are these different areas where you have the opportunity to add a sentence or two that create better communication, better boundaries, and increase their revenue when they go across it? So, like, for example, the stories we gave earlier, that interior designer, she could say, hey, the first time you cancel, not a problem. But anytime that there's a cancellation in 2 hours or less of the meeting time, there's an added cost of this. And rescheduling will take up an added billable hour, right? There's an outcome for it. So I promise you that client is not going to sit there and keep saying, oh, let's just push these back, because they know they have agreed to in that agreement that if they don't behave and treat your time a certain way, there is going to be a consequence, an outcome that affects them. And now they can choose, because sometimes maybe something really big happened and they really needed to push that call back. And you're like, you know what? I don't care if it costs me $100 extra. This call needs to go back. Well, now they got to make a better value decision on their side. And they'll come along and be like, look, this is what happened. It was a really big deal. And then you decide if you enforce the $100 charge or not. That's up to you. But without that clause there, you don't get a choice. That interior designer that I told you about, when she first came to me, she didn't have a choice. She's just sitting there twiddling her thumbs on a Thursday afternoon and be like, great, my time is wasted to go back across town out to the other client. Should have just stayed on that side of town, and so on. And then with our coach who overgave 9 months of added calls, the acceptance clause would have said, this is when things are done. And dear client, if you need extra calls, this is what that price is. So that her customer would have known, I need to get this stuff done in these 3 months, because if I don't, I am responsible for more costs. These boundaries help our clients behave better, but also make better decisions while increasing your revenue and solving your stress problems. Because you know that if the customer hits these boundaries, you have a place to go. You have a sanity boundary that's already been communicated and agreed to. All right, so there's the QR code and the address for the 7 signs you're overgiving free guide. It's a PDF. And in that, it'll also show you how to get a scope create clause and acceptance clause. You can just copy paste right into your agreements. But now it's time for our live Q&A. All right, let me go to the chat. I saw it moving a little bit. Let's see, what do we have? What's the best way to introduce a new boundary to an existing client? Okay, right. It is always better and easier when we've communicated things right up front. especially if they were in that written agreement. But what you can say to a new client, whenever I like to help my clients communicate to their clients, it's give the value exchange. Show how this boundary is going to help the client. Hey, client, I've noticed that we've been missing a lot of calls. It's really important to me that you get the value of what you've paid for in a timeline where it's going to be effective for you. And if we keep pushing these out like that, you're just not really going to get the results you wanted in the timeline. So I think it's best if we start putting a boundary that says that we've got to set up these next 4 calls within this month, and that if we're late or whatever, that we might just start, like whatever the outcome is. But I like to communicate the impact on the customer first, how having this boundary supports them, because then they're more open and receptive to it. Where if you're like, hey, that's it, you only get 4 calls, and if it's not done this month, like I'm not doing anymore. That doesn't sound great. So it's not what we're communicating, it's always how we're doing it, and letting your customers know, I'm still there for you. I still got you. I'm not leaving you. I'm not abandoning you. I want you to get the worthy value you've paid for. Let's make that happen. So that's always really helpful. So whenever you're adding to existing clients, that's usually how I recommend it be communicated. Yeah. Do you include pricing for additional time inside the contract or invoice separately? Do you include pricing for additional time inside the contract or invoice? Oh, okay. So this is up to you. This is up to you. You can simply say, hey, added calls will be at the billable rate at the time. Or you can say any added calls will be at the billable rate of $250 an hour, right? You can go ahead and just say it right in there. Kind of leave it up to you. The more clear you can be in the contracts, the better for the client. But at the same time, you don't want to have to re-customize every single contract every single time and all these different lines. So find the balance is what I would recommend. What if you already go off of an hourly rate, be like, oh, the client is expected to have 10 hours included at the rate of $250 an hour. And then later you could say any additional time will be billed at the hourly rate, right? You've already said the hourly rate in the contract, but you don't have to say it twice. So that's up to you. It's a business decision, it's a communication decision, but the more clear you can be up front, the more you can point to your clients, we agreed to this. We were all on the same page. Here it is. I'm not moving that boundary. I'm not changing the boundaries. I'm not changing the finish line here. It's here for you. So yeah. And I see some of you are getting that guide. Yeah, go ahead and just QR code it or go to that website. It's a free PDF download. Yeah, it's great. It's actually really good. I put a lot of time into that. Do I need to revise? Do I need to revise old contracts or just start with new ones? Your template. Whatever your template is where you want to start. That's what you want to have this baseline put in there. That's where you want to add the scope creep. That's where you want to add the acceptance clause. So that way, every contract moving forward has that, right? If it's an old contract that's already signed or already been done, we're not allowed to legally go change them unless we get the client to sign an amendment, which sometimes isn't always worth the effort. So I leave that up to you on how you want to handle the older ones. Usually if it's ongoing and there's an issue, kind of the example I said earlier, communicate to the client, this is the value in setting this boundary, why I'm setting that boundary and why we're going to go with this. But otherwise, just put it right in your templates. That way it's a no-brainer. You don't have to think about it anymore, right? We don't need to make this hard. This could be that simple. Just put them in there and let them live until one day you decide, I want to add a new one or I want to change and update this one. And then you only have to do it once. Yeah. Can I still reschedule if I want to, or does the clause lock me in? The clause is your choice to enforce it. It's your choice to enforce. So it's there. You choose to enforce it, whether or not. And you can enforce it, like maybe the first one, you're like, hey, I'm going to let this one slide, not a problem, but I just want to let you know, dear client, that according to our agreement, if we go beyond this, there might be additional billables here. So I just want to give you that heads up next time. But if you want to get ahead of it, I keep using the 2 revisions because I feel like so many of my clients have that. But when they come to that second revision, the one that's included already, be like, okay, client, just a friendly reminder, this is the last one that's included. So the sooner we can communicate, the better. But you're not required to charge them. That's always a choice. But there can be some negative windfall on the client side if you just keep being like, not a problem, not a problem, not a problem. Okay, today, no. It has that, oh, wait, what? Back to the wall. It can hurt the client emotionally when we do that. So we want to be communicating up front, but it is your choice whether or not to enforce it. You can always be like, I'll let it go this time, not a problem. But without it, you don't have a choice at all. You're just stuck with whatever the client wants to do or behave, and that is that. All right, guys, we're out of time. We are over. I always try to keep these under 20 minutes. Go ahead. You can always email me. I am at ceolegalcoach.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Acacia Thornton. I'm also on the social medias at CEO Legal Coach, and I will see you all there. We go live tomorrow with another great topic, more client stories that you have not heard yet. I'll see you there.